G'day guys, DYLIEDOG here. Now today I do have a different kind of video for you other than the Apex news and leak reporting, and don't worry, that's not going to stop anytime soon, but today I wanted to give you guys some tips on how to play ranked arenas in Season 10. Now I've actually been really enjoying ranked arenas so far this season, and I kind of wish Apex introduced this last season. But anyway, today I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on ranked arenas, the way I like to think early game, mid game, and late game. From things like weapon choices throughout the match, what meds you should hold, figuring out how your enemy squad is playing and coming up with ways to counter that, and even little things on what to focus on in early rounds compared to late game. But anyway guys, let's move into it. So let's move into a few beginner tips for you, and then we'll move into some more strategies in ranked arenas for early game and late game. Now I think a good starting point for a beginner is to start for cheap, close range weapons in early game. I usually like to rock with a Havoc or a Prowler and also a Mozambique. Now in early game, I try to focus on gathering materials, because in case you do lose the first round, at least you have more to work with in future rounds and can pick up more meds or better weapons in future rounds. And especially for beginners, I would definitely focus on heading to ring in the first few rounds, starting to set up your position, and this will also give you a good gauge on what your opponents are thinking. Now I think this is the most important one for beginners, especially if you are solo queuing ranked arenas. Stay with your team, ping which way you want to go early, and make sure your whole team heads in that one direction. I know it sounds simple, but I've had many rounds in arenas, and the only reason we have lost that Pacific round is because my teammate went the opposite direction at the start of the match, and that cost us in the long run. Now in saying this, even if you are with your team, try not to overextend either. Now this means don't push too far without your teammates. Only push when your team knows you're pushing. When fighting close to mid-range, your instinct when knocking an enemy or getting an enemy to 1 health is to push. But make sure your team knows you are pushing, because if you push by yourself, there's always the potential that you get knocked instead, and your team loses a teammate early in the round, and of course this can cost you in the long run. Now one more thing for you beginners, if you are a Lifeline and you have 2 hands and a brain, you have 2 jobs. 1, buy a gold backpack, and 2, res your teammates. That's all you have to do. Kill points don't matter in ranked arenas. You have 2 jobs and that is it. Trust me, Lifeline is the most simple legend to play in arenas, but also by far the most frustrating to play against. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest for anyone who plays Lifeline. So there are a few beginner tips for you guys, but now let's move into what I try to think about when playing ranked arenas. Now like I said earlier, I like to choose a Havoc or a Prowler at the start of a match with a Mozambique. Now with the rest of my materials, I try to stack up on meds. Now the reason why I choose a Havoc or a Prowler is because both weapons are very cheap and very good close range weapons. And the reason for the close range weapons is because in the first round both teams tend to play a little bit more aggressive to try and get an early lead in the match. And plus the Mozambique is highly underrated. You can upgrade a Mozambique by 1 stage and it only costs you 50 materials. A very underrated weapon. Now when we head into mid game, I tend to swap to a close range weapon and a long range weapon. My favourite combination this season so far is a Prowler and a Volt for close range, and a Rampage and a Longbow are my long range weapon choices. Now a big one that I try to focus on is stacking up on shield batteries and shield cells throughout mid game, because teams tend to hold back in the mid rounds, trying not to cost their team a round by pushing too quickly. So I wouldn't focus too much on buying med kits and syringes, maybe 1 or 2 at the most. Now with things like Throwables, I honestly wouldn't purchase them, at least until you see how the enemy squad is playing. If they are camping in a room, I would suggest purchasing a few Throwables, but honestly they aren't really a necessity in most cases. Now of course if you are running a Rampage, obviously try and buy a few Thermites. Now I don't think a lot of people know this, but if you purchase your ultimate in arenas, if you decide not to use it in a round, your ult will carry over to the next round. Now I wouldn't suggest sacrificing a shield battery or meds over your ultimate ability. However, if you do have some materials spare on your ultimate, then I would say buy it, but make sure to use it at the right time. This goes back to at the start of the video where I said make sure to focus on gathering materials in early game. Now let's move into late game mechanics. Now if you do end up in round 6, 7, 8 or even 9, then this is when things get intense. One wrong move and it could cost your whole team. So when it gets to late game, I would still suggest a close range weapon and a long range weapon, but of course I would still focus more on good positioning and watching for a mistake from your enemy squad. If one enemy extends too far, focus them. If one tries to push you, make your whole team focus that one person. Eventually one person will make a mistake, and that's when you should strike. Now I can make a bunch of strategies here, but honestly, the biggest mistake is overcomplicating these sort of things. If you were playing well in the early rounds, but making one little mistake here and there, just fix up that one little error, and then you should be fine. If you have somehow scraped through to the late game, then make sure to stick to the basics. Stay with your team, don't overextend, and only push when your team is ready. Now guys, that is all the tips that I have for you in this Ranked Arenas guide. Now for people who don't know, I'm a massive Caustic main, and basically since the season started, I've had a lot of fun playing with him in Ranked Arenas. So if you guys want a Caustic specific Ranked Arenas guide, then let me know down in the comments section below. And if you guys want to watch me play some Ranked Arenas, then make sure to come check out the channel's live streams, which happen over on Twitch. The link will be in the description below as well. But that is all from me guys, so make sure to like the video and subscribe if you are new to the channel for the quick and straight to the point Apex content. But anyway guys, DYLIEDOG will catch us all later.